So VPNs. A VPN is basically a virtual private network that allows you to be private on a public network. Basically what it does is encrypts everything from the device you are using through the network to your home broadband. So everything you do is encrypted and no one can see it but you when it gets back to your device. Benefits of a VPN are things such as being able to use or play things like BBC iPlayer because everything's encrypted through a VPN, so no one knows what you're actually doing. So you can actually be using BBC iPlayer from abroad, even though it's not actually a, a service that is allowed abroad. Through a VPN, your location's unknown. It's only the location where your home router is. That's the location that the VPN shows when it's being used. So you can be using things like BBC iPlayer or YouTube or any other thing that's not allowed in the location you are at right now. The next thing I want to talk about is RAID, which means redundant array of inexpensive disks. What RAID is basically a configuration of your hard drives or SSDs or even SSHDs on your computer, laptop or other technology such as a NAS system. RAID is basically designed to maximize your hard drive's capability. There's quite a few different types of RAID. Firstly, the RAID 0, which is basically just striping all your files and documents or whatever you have on your hard drives through two hard drives. So if you have two 1 TB hard drives in a RAID configuration of RAID 0, you actually have 2 TB of hard drive storage. But if one hard drive fails, then you've lost all your data. Secondly, there's RAID 1. Basically what RAID 1 does is mirror everything you have on one hard drive to two hard drives. So if you've got two 1 TB hard drives in a RAID 1 configuration, you only have 1 TB of hard drive storage. But if one hard drive fails, you've still got all your data. Next is RAID 5. RAID 5 is probably the best RAID configuration for redundancy because blocks of all your data are mirrored onto all the different hard drives, so you can lose up to 2 hard drives out of the 3 and you still won't lose any data because you can rebuild that data from the other hard drive. Next is RAID 10, which is basically a mix between RAID 0 and RAID 1. So you have 4 hard drives, 2 of them are mirrored to the other 2, and one of them's mirrored to the other and the same with the other one. So you have striped data between 2 hard drives, and then the data's mirrored onto the other 2 hard drives. Next thing I want to talk about is NAS systems. NAS stands for Network Attached Storage. NAS system is basically your own cloud storage, so you're not having to pay uh, for OneDrive or the Google Drive for storage. You've got your own system. You can have this at home or at your office or anywhere else you have internet. Why you get your own NAS system? There's quite a few benefits of having a NAS system. With a NAS system, you have full control over the data you put onto it, and no one else has access to it apart from you or whoever you give access to. There's other benefits like you don't pay a monthly fee, you just pay the initial fee for life. You don't have to pay any other fee other than that, unless if a hard drive goes faulty or something like that, then you'll have to replace that hard drive. You can add more storage at any time, or maybe you don't use storage, you can take a hard drive out and use it for something else. It's usually faster to transfer files because you're using your own network. You're not using a you're not using a cloud server. You can share your cloud storage with other people. You can encrypt all your data as well, so no one else can see what you have on your NAS system. You've also got access to RAID configuration, so you can, if you've got two hard drives in your NAS system, you can use RAID 1 to mirror all your data onto the other hard drive. So if one goes faulty, you don't lose any of your documents or files. You can also back your data on an off-site NAS system. So if there was a fire or something like that and your NAS system went down, everything you had on that system was backed up on an off-site NAS system, so you don't lose anything. You can also make several accounts for friends or family, so they've got their own dedicated NAS storage. So you can actually be an admin yourself and assign users, so they've got their own personal cloud storage, but you can access that as well if you like. Next thing is NTFS, which is a hard drive format, just like FAT32 or just FAT on its own. NTFS is better than FAT32 because the max file size you can have on FAT32 is only 4 gig. So if you're a designer and you have a raw file, you can't the FAT32 format isn't good enough for you. You're going to have to you're gonna need NTFS. Also, you've only got 2 TB of maximum partition size on FAT32. So if you've got a 4 TB hard drive, you're going to have to format it and make two partitions of it, so you've only got 2 TB partitions. None of this is you don't have anything like this on NTFS. So NTFS is better for most users. Last but not least, we have mesh networks. Mesh networks are pretty difficult to explain, so I'm going to use Paint to explain them. So we have your router at home, which is wired to your company, like Virgin. Let's just write V there. So your home router is connected to all your devices. This is a straight connection wirelessly and sometimes wired, like you've got a laptop, that's a wired connection directly to your home router, and all the other connections are wireless. This is a straightforward connection, but with the mesh network you can go more complicated than that and actually have so with a mesh network you can have one router that's connected directly to a company like Virgin, for example, and then the other routers are part of your mesh network. They can be wirelessly connected to the original router, and all these will be connected simultaneously to each other as well. So if you're connected to this router, you can through a phone, and you search Facebook, for example, you can actually route it through. So if it can get through directly, it go that way, or if it can't go that way, it go through this one and then through to the router that's wired to the internet, well, to your broadband provider. Mesh networks are useful for things that are like moving about, so you can actually have one of these in your car and have it a part of a mesh network, so when you're moving about you're not you can move about without a problem. It's wireless, so as long as you've got you can connect to a different router that can access the original router. You don't have any problems. Mesh networks are useful. Uh, the original router, you don't actually have to have one. You can have two or three, or even more if you want. And they're very useful for buses, or like most buses, which are, well, all buses that have free Wi-Fi actually use a mesh network, so they can connect to all the other buses and connect to the original routers to give you access to free Wi-Fi. Mesh networks don't actually have to be routers, they can actually be your phones or your laptops and iPads. They can actually be connected through Bluetooth and Wi-Fi to each other. So, for example, if you're on the beach with loads of people with their phones and you're all a part of a mesh network, you can actually, if you've just gone out of range of the you've got no reception on your phone because you're somewhere where there's no coverage, and you're connected to one of these one of these phones or computers which are part of a mesh network, you can actually use their signal to the cell towers to actually make a phone call. You can even use their internet if they allow you access to that. So mesh networks can actually be useful for emergency calls and things like that as well.